Hey, Brendan, what's up? Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So I know that you're having some connection issues. So if we lose your video, we'll just keep talking and we'll just have to hear you instead of see you.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Should be good for now, though.
Yeah. No, you're doing great. You've been on air for 5 seconds, so you're already killing it. So congrats on your 3 Grammys nominations. How did the band first respond when you heard the news?
Thank you. Yeah, it was an off day when we were on tour, and it was just a rainy, gloomy morning, and we just woke up in the bus, and we were getting a call that they were announcing them and to tune in. So we all were just kind of sitting around the TV watching the nominations, and um, it was kind of not really expected that would happen, and we kind of just we're all just in shock and so pleasantly surprised. And it was a really cool moment because we all were just together, and we were all everyone we tour with, and we were all just kind of it made a gloomy rainy day really exciting and special.
And how is the band feeling about the competition this year? As many of us know that the rock categories this year are such a fun mixed bag. Some of your competition in the rock and metal categories, you're competing against Beck, but also the Black Keys, Ghost, Ozzy Osbourne. Are there any acts that you're like a big fan of that you're maybe intimidated by, excited to compete with this year?
No, I mean it's a cool. It's I mean for us it's just kind of unexpected to be even considered in something of this nature. And I know we were all really when we were sitting there watching, we all were really excited that Idols was nominated as well because we played with them a lot over the last year, and it was cool. Yeah, I think we were all more so just like you know excited to be even listed in a list like that. So
It's true. It's not every year that a hardcore act gets a little shine, by the Academy. In years past, other like hardcore or like kind of fusion acts have been nominated. We've seen bands like Code Orange, Power Trip, Body Count, won a Grammy, I think in 2020. So it's like there's definitely the Recording Academy has definitely expanded the breadth of like bands, especially from the hardcore and punk scenes. Can you talk a little bit about, growing up in Baltimore, coming from a very special, I mean, like what many would consider the birthplace of hardcore, you're from the DMV area. Um, what was it like coming up in that scene? And I guess like, did you ever even follow the Grammys growing up, or any award show? Would you ever have considered uh, this level of acclaim?
yeah, I think all of us have always saying praises to the area that we came up in and still all live in. um I think it's a very special place that breeds a lot of very a very large spectrum of really cool and interesting creativity and different voices. And I think also being kind of a smaller, Baltimore being kind of like a smaller city, I think it's always kind of almost created this environment where it's kind of created this overlap of anyone doing something. It's kind of like you're all kind of doing it in a really small space of a small city compared to a Los Angeles or New York, somewhere where things can be more spread out. Um,
Yeah.
but uh, but yeah, I think it's like it's really cool coming like from Baltimore, DC area and celebrating kind of like the tour that we just did as well. It was all with like a lot of just Baltimore artists as well, and no one really sounded alike. And I think growing up there, it was like that was kind of the nature of the shows we were kind of going to, or just like the kind of there was a spot called the Charm City Art Space, and would just have shows every weekend of just like all different kinds of stuff, like hardcore stuff and indie stuff and like rap stuff, like whatever um was going on. Like there was like little spaces like that where stuff like that could happen. um and yeah, I mean, even like some of us grew up a little closer to DC, and like our first shows were kind of just like community center shows. And
Mm-hmm.
like me and Daniel played in a band, um and his band and my band at the time when we were younger actually played a show together at a community center before we even knew each other. We found out like much later in our life once we became friends, but it was just like that just goes to show like how small it's just like if there was like that kind of music event happening, like bands would play it. And it was a really cool way to come. That was like my first introduction to just live music in general. I think like you know growing up I just like loved music but didn't really connect it to like being like a tangible thing you could touch or that was real. It was kind of just like sounds
Mm.
coming out of the box a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think going to like those community center shows, and then like the Knights of Columbus Hall shows or the church shows, were kind of my first opportunity to see like, oh, this is something that I can see in person and feel in person, connect to. And that started to kind of build the context of like, I don't know, just like what different music came from. And it started piecing together like, you know, um, a bigger picture of just the context of music and the big world of it that I'm still discovering.
I think that what you highlight is just how important it is for community, and I think that's how music thrives, right? When you have um, like community spaces, DIY spaces, and keeping those alive is so important because that's how we come up with bands like Turnstile, right? Like that's how you guys came up, was through these community spaces, and they weren't necessarily defined by a genre. Can you just throw out like a few of the Baltimore artists that you've brought on tour with you recently?
Yeah, we just did this tour with Snail Mail
Oh,
and JPEG
yes.
Mafia. And in the spring, we tour with Truth Cult, great band from Baltimore. Um, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of just great music in Baltimore. End It, it's a newer band. DDM. Um, sorry, I'm getting distracted by the noise a little bit, but
Oh
yeah.
no. Well, I can jump to my next question. I mean, I think that the range of those bands really speaks to your band. It really speaks to how Turnstile has not just like function, but how it's grown an audience. I think about how your last record, Glow On, um, it's a really fun like medley of sounds. And I think that for some people, and I believe we talked about this the last time I interviewed you, but for some people, they might find the mix of sounds like a little alienating, if they like to stick to one type of sound or one type of genre. But to do that would be so against the grain of Turnstile, or it would just be it wouldn't be true to your DNA as like a Baltimore band. And just to give people who are not as familiar with the record, to give people an idea of like this range, you know, Turnstile, yes, while you guys, you know, your heritage is like hardcore, um, you know, you play with some really cool sounds. Like, you know, you got some new wave stuff happening on Glow On. You've got some really cool like tropical rhythms. You hear a little bit of soca influence. You hear a little bit of reggaeton, and you also hear there's like a touch of go-go. There's like a go-go break, I believe, and that is something that's so integral to your band's sound. Can you talk a little bit about how, you know, the relationship between punk and go-go, especially, you know, I mean, I feel like members of like Minor Threat and like, you know, Henry Rollins loves go-go. Like they've talked about how the go-go block parties in the 80s would kind of like bleed into the hardcore punk shows. What was your experience with that, and why was this so important to grow up with?
Yeah, it's very special to the DMV area. Like I know that, you know, every like there's, you know, radio stations that just growing up would just be just like pure go-go, and at every school dance, like no matter what, there was always like the go-go section that was like a half hour of go-go. And like didn't until real like later in life realize it wasn't really, once I started traveling, didn't really realize that a lot of people like weren't as like, it wasn't as like big a part of where they were from, different parts of the country and stuff. And yeah, I mean, I think it's like our band is full of drummers that I think like, you know, go-go music is such a, you know, a percussive and
Yes.
energetic and just full of life. And I feel like just really speaks to like the voice and like the, you know, the culture of the area. Um and I think too, like, so for, you know, I think one thing for like, you know, in hardcore and kind of what even drew and still draws me to it is like none of us really were musicians, you know. I think all of us kind of just wanted to like play music but didn't really you know, never really like studied music really. I mean, did like school bands and stuff like that, but like, you know, it was like, I think it's something, what's most special about like punk and hardcore to me is that you don't necessarily need any experience to kind of, it's less focused on like skill and how good you can sing and how good you can play an instrument, and more focused on expressing yourself. And just like if you have something that you're trying to just like, you know, inside of you that you're feeling, that you're just trying to get out, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of just do it in a really pure way. And there's almost a built-in, you know, once you decide that you want to do that, there's almost a built-in community of people that will come and like be at the show. And I don't really think that like really applies to a lot of different kinds of music where, you know, it's hard to imagine a lot of other kind of communities where it's like, you know, you get, you know, just people kind of built in that are just going to come out and support it, like, you know, in a small little spot, and you can be really bad at your instrument. Like the way I taught myself how to play guitar is so wrong. And like I play with like the wrong fingers and stuff like that, but like it gets the job done. You know, I can just like learned enough to kind of like feel good about what I was trying to get out, you know, and I'm still trying to get better at instruments and stuff like that. And, but I think it's more so focused on the feelings and the ideas, and you can have inspiration and just try everything to kind of get it out. I find that really special. And I think like, you know, I think when you look at it that way, it kind of creates less boundaries on what you're doing. Because if you're tapping into, I guess, like, if you're only tapping into like your talent and your skill, maybe it like looking at it more in a technical way, but if you're tapping into like your imagination and your feelings and what you're trying to get across, I think it's kind of possibilities for what you can kind of create and put out are endless. So
It's a lot of intuition. And I think what I've admired about Turnstile through the years is the the band just like, you know, you guys consistently surprise us with new sounds, with new takes on sounds. You know, I remember Time and Space having, you know, like going from like a hardcore song to hearing something a little more R&B. Like I like those surprises, and I think that's thanks to, you know, you guys have such an instinct because you say that you're not musicians, but I feel like such an important part about being a musician and being an artist really is taking in art from all kinds of places, being a good listener when it comes to music, being a cultivated listener. I feel like you guys have really driven that home, you know, and it shows in your techniques. I'm thinking, what are some, can you talk about some of the music that has inspired you guys in a band? You know, like what inspires you, for example, to pick up maracas, you know, in the middle of like a breakdown, and then suddenly you're like, let me just like grab like a tambourine or like maracas or something during like the hardest part of the track. Um, who are some artists that have inspired you?
yeah, I mean, I think as I was saying before, I think like the band is very drummer heavy, and I think that's kind of a driving factor is like when writing songs is like how it feels rhythmically. That sets the tone for a lot of songs sometimes for us. Um, and
It's like it
yeah,
evokes like the physicality of like performing too.
yeah, definitely. I think like, you know, the more that you kind of experiment with, you know, you have an idea and you're feeling like you want to have like some shakers on this slow, heavy part and stuff like that, the more you kind of experiment with those kinds of things, if you have a desire to, the more you can kind of get out. You know, I think like making music in general is kind of just a shot in the dark. And it's like, that's the coolest thing about it though, is like you're kind of just, there's not really a formula. It's kind of this open canvas. It's like, I think of it like you give a little kid a crayon before he's ever like knows how to draw anything. It's just like draw and just draws kind of just like anything, just like scribbles, and just it makes so much sense to the kid. Um, I like to think of it kind of like the same way where it's just like you have, you know, your idea, your feelings that you're trying to put out, and you see it the way that you see it, and you're kind of just trying to. It's just like constantly working to try to like manifest it in some way. So
Hmm.
like, you know, when you have the like endless possibilities of different things you can do, you're kind of just like, you know, if something feels right, like if you want to have some sort of, you know, as you were saying, like some shakers over some part that might be unexpected or something like that, but it makes sense and clicks and feels so right to you. That's like, that's kind of what you're looking for the whole time, is like a feeling that just feels right. And I think it's best also too when it's not necessarily something you've felt before. Cause I think if it's something that you want to feel, that's probably better than something you felt before. And I think when you're making music, you're trying to like, you're pulling from all sorts of inspiration, but you're also, and you're trying to make music probably based on that inspiration. But I think you're also kind of filling in the blanks of like where what the world doesn't have, and like a feeling that you maybe desire, but it's not necessarily there sometimes. And I think that's such an exciting opportunity to have.
I can definitely tell like in your performances, it's like there's no structure to how you move as like a front person, But I'm thinking to myself, like, this is it's so interesting to watch how you dance because it's like you're pulling from so many different directions. Like how I'm thinking, not just about your voice, but also your movement. Like how did you I feel like in hardcore there's like a standard way of being a front person, especially if you're a guy. I feel like there is like a range of movement that you're really allowed. I mean, some people, they will just like jump off the stage. They'll be like leaping from one direction to the other. Other people will just kind of like, like hunch and like, scream and like spit into the audience and stuff. But you have this, it's almost like watching this like punk ballet technique in your performance. So how did you get comfortable enough to have this like, freedom of range? At least that's what I think whenever I see you perform is, your body moves with the music in a way that it looks very, very liberating.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I always feel like I was like thrusted into being like a singer because I played drums mostly like before playing in this band, and just started this band, like didn't really play shows for the first couple of years, but kind of just made music. And then eventually we started touring more, and the more and more we played shows, I was like, oh shoot, I guess I'm a singer in a band, It was kind of like accidentally happened. And I think I'm always still get really nervous playing shows, but especially in the beginning, it was like really kind of, it's a different thing than being like playing drums. It's
Mm-hmm.
both fulfilling in different ways, but I think when you're up there and it's kind of your voice and you're in the like front with a microphone, it's just way more intimidating. And I think, like you were saying, like I think early shows, I tended to kind of just do exactly what you're saying, which is like say one word and just throw the mic down and jump into the crowd, just move so much. And I think a lot of times it was like out of excitement and the energy in the room, but also just like nervousness too, just to be kind of, holding a mic and people like looking at and hearing like my voice as opposed to just playing an instrument. And it's all like very powerful in different ways. But for me, like singing, I was like, oh, this is really scary now. So I probably just, I remember people always used to be like, well, you didn't act, you said like two words in the whole set. And it was really just because I, just like, it's just like the nerves and the adrenaline from just that kind of vulnerable, I don't know, it was a little vulnerable. It just felt a little extreme. And I feel like same with like writing music. I think all of us,
Hmm.
like every record that we do, it's like you kind of just are, it's just a reflection of you at the time. And I think with every record you do and every year you play more shows and listen to more music and see more music and get inspired by it, like you're constantly kind of just unlocking different parts of yourself, I think, and getting more comfortable with just like, I don't think you'll ever fully make sense of it all, but I think you just get more comfortable in like living in your skin a little bit, creatively, if that makes sense. So I feel like, and that's why I like to, I like touring so much because a lot of times when you make um, songs in studio, like I think they really come to life when you actually start playing them in a real life environment. And you start to kind of like unlock different parts of the songs that just like, they start to change a little bit and take a life of their own. And I think like in a way that's kind of like what everyone in the band is doing is like we move as a unit where we're kind of like, playing um and touring and making music and putting out songs and stuff like that. But with the progression of it, you kind of get a little more comfortable in yourself and you like, kind of like just get more comfortable expressing yourself, I guess, as like, so yeah, I think that's kind of just how we always kind of just look at it. And I think over time, it's always kind of shifting because I think it's just getting more comfortable with what you're doing. And I've said before, but like every time we put out a record, it's like, dang, this feels so good. I don't think anyone's gonna like it, but this is like really cool to us. But that just kind of is just like because I think like it's just a really cool process of just like progressing, and music is a really cool documentation of seeing that. Like when you look back at each record, I see like exactly where we were and kind of exactly, and it's not like a up progression, it's definitely a forward one where it's just like just different and changing, and you're growing in a lot of ways too, and going through experiences and getting new musical influences and all that stuff. So that's, yeah, I guess that's just the essence of being in a band, but it's cool when you kind of lay it down and think about it.
I mean, I think what's very special about your band, and this isn't the case with just any band, is that, you know, your fans have to grow with you. And I feel like you have a fan base that is very open to that. You know, I think about some of the people I've seen walk into your shows and they look really intimidating, you know? And I'm like, oh my God, am I gonna get trampled by this person? You know, it's like every time you enter a pit, generally, it's like at your own risk. But walking into a turnstile pit is really fun because it'll be like, you know, someone who looks really like jacked. And I'm like, okay, I really hope they don't barrel into me right now. And next thing you know, they're like boogieing and like they're really feeling themselves. I feel like that's the key to a turnstile show, really, is you got to let your body feel wherever the band goes. And you guys take it to some really fun places.
I love that so much. Yeah, I mean that's like, you know, I think with like live environment stuff, we're like a small part of it, and that's like that kind of environment that's kind of happening is just like a cool thing to witness and be a part of and watch, you know.
And so, your recent show in Los Angeles was at the Palladium, I believe. And there were some notable people in the audience. There was Scott Ian from Anthrax. There was Nick Hexum from 311, who lots of people have compared you guys to. And I also heard that Billie Eilish was there. Did you meet any of these folks? What was it like?
Yeah, I met all of them. We did a night at the Palladium, so Scott and Nick came there. Some other friends as well. And Billy was at the next night we played at the Shrine.
Oh, cool.
And it's cool. Yeah. I mean, just like, it's definitely cool just getting to meet other people, especially if it's kind of different, you know, maybe different musical circles
Right.
that we admire from afar, but aren't necessarily always getting to kind of overlap. And I guess that's sometimes the cool thing about like music festivals, where you get the opportunity to catch things that like you love, but maybe don't really get the opportunity to see all the time, and don't, you know, especially if we're like touring a lot. So it's always cool to like be able to kind of see that kind of stuff. And it's, yeah, it was really cool.
What's been your, I guess, like the most exciting music discovery for you, you know, whether it was at Coachella or at like one of the other festivals that you've played?
Musical discovery at a festival, definitely. I remember, I mean, a more recent one that's kind of just like saw very briefly, but wasn't really like familiar with. But now I'm just like kind of obsessed is Rosalia.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
and I just like, you know, it's like another example of just like, I can't think of beside a festival, like a context where Turnstile would play with her, but I would love for it to happen, obviously. And all of it, like obviously all of us try it. But like just as of recently, I'm just like kind of just obsessed. And it's just music is so good and just like gives me so much energy and life. And um, that's
Are
just
you
one example.
Yeah, are you picking up any Spanish listening to Rosalia?
Not not really. I studied Spanish when I was in like for like all elementary, middle school. So
Yeah.
I can kind of like get glimpses of things, but more so I'm just yeah, just just feeling it. But
Talk
it
about, I
is
mean,
really
she's
cool. Like, sorry.
sorry, I think our wires are crossed. Or there's like a
Yeah.
delay.
But also too, like we played a festival in California more recently, and I think like there were one of when we were asked to play it, like one of the questions was like, oh, okay, like who's playing? Like we're just kind of asking basic information. And like Beach House is playing. We're like, all right, we'll play if we can play right before like the Beach House day. That way we can actually see Beach House because Beach House is one of my favorite bands in the world and also
Wow,
from Baltimore.
that's right.
Um, and we ended up playing like right before then. It was like an amazing block in my head. It was Caroline Polachek, then
Wow.
us, and then Beach House on the same stage. So I was just kind of like camped up for a few hours, just and like even just like the opportunity for us to be like playing in those kind of environments is like just so cool because it's like it's music we all love and music that we're inspired by and we're excited by like peers making music and just being big fans of, and especially when it's very different from what we're doing as well. It's like I think we always are excited about the opportunities to play with bands from more of like the circle in the world that we come from, and also playing with bands that we might not necessarily ever on paper might make sense, but to us, like we connect the dots in our head that like, oh, this would be an awesome show. And I think we've always kind of, even from when we started touring, we've always kind of like been excited by the idea of like kind of always having those things intertwined a little bit, just like the bands that we kind of, when we do get the opportunity to kind of play with different bands or people making music, I think the only criteria, there's no like sound criteria. The only criteria is that it's like inspiring to us and we'd be excited to share the stage with.
I think that's really like at the heart of your ethos. And I think also like I I'm increasingly believing that it's a generational thing as well, where it's I feel like we have more music existing in the world than we ever did before, at least like more recorded music than we've ever had before. And um, I think that more and more people are opening themselves up to that. Uh, and that's how we get Grammy nominated records like yours. So um thinking back to like going back to the Grammys, is there anyone that I mean, besides Turnstile, obviously, but are there any people that you're really rooting for at the Grammys? Is there anyone you're really excited to see?
Um, I have to think of just who was nominated because I can't really remember the list, but I'm pretty sure Dami and JD Beck got nominated for something. I'm very much rooting for them. I think they're amazing. They're just like next level genius musicians. Trying to think. As I said before, Idols was nominated as well. It was super exciting to see them. Um, uh, Wet Leg
Ah,
nominated as
yes.
well, I believe. Great band. Um, I can't think who else was up there, but definitely
There's
some cool stuff.
there's going to be a lot of interesting characters, I think, I mean, well, we have yet to see exactly who's going to be performing. Fingers crossed, you guys get up there, you get to do some like bizarro collaboration with like Steve Lacy or I feel like that pairing could work really well. I ship it. Uh, yeah, or like I don't know, Turnstile and T Swift. I'm just Turnstile and Mary J.
Yes, yes.
Blige. Who knows? We're
I'm
manifesting.
down. I'm down.
And so you guys plan on going to the ceremony in February. Do you know who you're bringing yet? Do you think yeah, who are you bringing, and what is like your on your sartorial mood board, for red carpet fashion?
I haven't really heard too much information on it. We're gonna, I know all of us, if we can, we're just probably just prioritizing just bringing our family, our parents, if we can.
Oh.
Um, one, like a funny, like, I think one funny full circle thing was like when I was younger, like it was always kind of a thing that my mom joked about where she'd be like, all right, stop drumming. It's 9 o'clock. And I'd be like, please let me get 10 more minutes. And it was just like her thing that she would always say, like when she would kind of like, just be joking. She's like, well, when you go to the Grammys, you have to bring your mom. I was just like, all right, fine. And then I get to play for 10 more minutes. So like,
Oh my gosh.
not that I would ever like actually have expected to be going, but
Yeah.
like I just by, and I just there's no option to not bring her. So she's definitely got to be coming. And then probably our families. And yeah, I mean, if depends on how big the guest list is, because we're known to kind of burst the guest list out of its seams.
Right.
So we'll see.
Wow, your mom really, I mean, talk about manifesting. I feel like your mom low-key manifested you being at the Grammys. She thought she was joking, but it turns out your
Yeah,
mother
she
is a
definitely did.
very powerful witch. So,
Yeah,
oh,
she is very
I
powerful.
hope you guys have so much fun. Let's talk about what's happening next year. Like, what's besides the Grammys? You have a few things on the agenda for 2023. I just want to shout out that Turnstile is going to be opening for Blink 182 on tour with the original lineup. Um, is that something that, I mean, did you guys get to meet Blink 182 yet, or was it just kind of like, I don't know, like they approached you? How did that work out?
Yeah, they reached out to us and got to meet some of them, and um, yeah, they're just super excited about the idea of touring together. And for us, it's like that's like soundtrack to kind of you know elementary, middle, high school. It's just kind of like of our generation. That was just a very um, big band for what we were just like exposed to our whole life growing up. And I know that everyone was like a fan growing up. Um, so yes, I think it'll be a cool opportunity. We've never done like an arena tour like that. So it's like, for us, it was like, it's exciting because it's like getting to play with them and doing a tour of us like that. We've never really done that format before. It just seems like a cool new experience to have as a band. So really looking forward to that.
Is there, and this is just because I'm a music nerd and I know you are too, is there like a particular Blink 182 era that you feel emotionally attached to?
Um, I think the self-titled was kind of my friend that picked me up and drove me to school every day from, I guess, right when he got his license. He picked me up and drove me to school every day, and he only had a few CDs in his car, and that one was like on repeat every single morning. And we would just like get in the car in the freezing, it's like still dark outside, and just like put it on and just sit in the heated car until the bell rings, and it would just be playing on repeat. So for me personally, that one was just like very ingrained in my high school experience. And I know Pat definitely would. I know everyone probably was into a bunch of different records. I know Pat loves Blink, and Dan definitely probably has some favorite drumming moments as well, because I know Travis is a big um, drum hero. Um, but yeah,
I think that's like a very emo choice of you. The self-titled.
yeah, it's great. There's some great songs.
And so what am I? Huh. Yeah, let's take a look at some viewer questions. I hope you're ready for this. Okay.
Oh, there's viewers.
There are viewers. Surprise.
Wow.
Hello, viewers. Thanks for the questions. Yeah, we have some fun ones here, I think. Okay. Username Turnstile311. Please ask Brendan if we are getting new music in 2023.
There's new music being worked on, but it's hard to say timeline stuff really. But anything's possible really.
And username Lazzy1580 asks, what is the first album you bought with your own money?
First album. It might have been the Godzilla soundtrack on cassette.
Oh my God.
I remember
We're going way back.
Yeah, my sister used to take me to, my older sister would take me to stores and I would like let me buy a couple tapes. I'm trying to think what the first tapes were, but I think that might have been one of the first ones.
What was on the Godzilla soundtrack? Was that with like, I'm trying to remember. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
I know one of my favorite Rage Against the Machine songs on there. It's called No Shelter. And I remember I just would play that every single day. I was just so obsessed with it. But yeah, it was a great soundtrack. I can't really, trying to think, drawing a blank right now, but yeah, definitely one of the early ones. Definitely got like I got a Nirvana live album too. It was I'm forgetting the name of what it was called. It was like live from the Muddy Banks.
The Muddy Banks of Wishka? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. That one. And that was a big one too. I remember like that was an early one I had, and I remember I like in my music class in elementary school, like the day where you get to bring in a song and play for the class, and everyone got to bring in one. I brought in the live version of School for that, and the teacher wasn't really feeling it, but I thought it was great. Yeah,
that's such a that is a deep cut. That's a Bleach deep cut.
Yeah.
And then another question is from Ann M 1991. What did you do with yourself when you couldn't tour during COVID?
It was kind of interesting because I think for us, we were on tour in Europe and lockdown happened and we had to cancel the rest of the tour and just fly home immediately. And we had a couple months where we were just fully just in our rooms, not doing anything, but we had already planned on going in and recording Glow On. So in a weird way, it kind of opened up a really big window for us to just focus on this album and like spend more time with it, recording it than we usually do. I think most of our recording experiences are pretty small windows where it's like you have 3 weeks, go in and do it. And then obviously you spend more time if you want to change things and mess with things. But this one was way more of an open window because of COVID. And I think I'm so, in a weird way, like grateful for the opportunity because I think we definitely, knowing us, we probably would have been touring and just would have been playing shows and would have just broken up the experience. But because there was so much, like the whole world was frozen, it kind of gave more time to just be at home with the songs, and all of us could kind of just, I think, especially during that time, I think everyone was just looking for a way to stay healthy by just putting their energy into something, like no matter what it was, like
Mhm.
whether it's just going on long walks or bike rides or cooking or whatever it is. And I think for us, we were lucky that the album was kind of that thing for us to just be like, all right, we're just going to hyper focus and try to just stay mentally healthy working on it. So
And I'm glad you had that time to do it. Um, we have one more reader question. This one is from user Carter Z312, and they want to know, okay, name your favorite lyric of the year that is not your own.
oh my God.
You pick something that you guys like sing along to on the bus. If you guys do sing-alongs on the bus, wouldn't that be cute?
So so a song from 2022, a lyric.
Okay.
I'm always bad at these things because my brain is just scatterbrained and it's hard for me to focus in. But mm, I don't know. I'm sorry.
It's
I'm not really
okay if
sure.
it's
Yeah.
the chorus of Chicken Teriyaki by Rosalia. We will not judge you.
I mean, honestly, like it would in this moment, it would be a Rosalia song, but I would be too embarrassed to mispronounce it. So I'm just gonna refrain.
All right, I respect that. All right, y'all. That is all the time that we have with Brendan Yates. Thank you so much for joining us, telling us really nice stories about your band and your mom. And I'm wishing you guys the best of luck at the Grammys this year. Um, so please stick around, and we will be right back with Inside the Grammys.